Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Ebke. I'm with the Libertarian Pragmatist Caucus, and I am joined today by several guests for our second LPCaucus Town Hall. Andy Craig is our political director, and I'm going to turn things over to him right now.
Hi, thanks, Laura. So for these, as you know, we've decided that one of the good things for the party would be to become more familiar with some of our elected libertarians, people who've actually won elections and are serving in public office. Last time we had Representative Marshall Burt from Wyoming, and this month we have two city councilors who are Trisha Butler from Clarksville, Tennessee, and Jim Turney in Alamonte Springs, Florida. Jim is, some of you may know, a former chairman of the Libertarian National Committee back in the 80s. He's worked at the Mercatus Center. He's done investment work. And since 2017, he's been on the city council there in Alamonte Springs. And Trish Butler was just elected. She was part of the Frontier Project, one of the candidates working with Apollo and all those great people. And she is serving in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is the 5th largest city in the state. So over 100,000 people, I think almost 150,000. So we're happy to have them join us here today, and we appreciate your time and taking some questions and explaining, you know, how you managed to get elected as a libertarian and what that's been like.
All right. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for having us.
Well, we're so happy to have you. And again, I want to remind people who are watching on either Facebook Live or on YouTube that you can ask your questions and we will get to those as soon as time allows. So let's talk a little bit about your elections. Jim, you want to go first? You were elected first. You want to tell us a little bit how you got elected?
I had it so easy. It's almost a shame to describe it. But I decided to run for my city. We call it a commission here, and by the way, we call it Alamonte Springs without the E at the end. But it's okay. Most people say it the way you say it, except the locals. That's how we know if you're local or not. Anyway, I serve as a commissioner here in the city of Alamonte Springs, which about 45,000 citizens officially, but we're actually much larger because there's a lot of holes in the city. But I saw that there had been an incumbent who had been serving for about 10 years unopposed, and I thought, well, it looks like that might be a good chance to do it. So I waited until the last possible minute while I did all my preparations and planning, but we did not plan one thing when I announced and filed for office. We didn't plan on the opponent withdrawing. And so even though he had already qualified as the incumbent for re-election on the ballot, he went down and said, no, I don't want to do this. And so he withdrew. So my opponent disappeared and I was just declared the winner automatically. And then as is often the case around here, especially in my city, incumbents run unopposed, like my predecessor did. So I ran unopposed in 2019. I'm up again this year in 2021. We'll see how that goes. I always assume that I'm going to have an opponent, though. But that's how I got elected. Very easy. I've not had to worry about, I do a lot of door-to-door and canvassing, but I don't have to worry about standing at the polling place and waving with a silly smile on my face on election day.
At least the weather's probably good there on election
day.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, it's not like it's not like in Nebraska where you might have a 10-degree day. So Trisha, you want to tell us a little bit about your election?
Well, so fifth biggest city, we actually have 150,000, and we're hoping to push into 200,000. Clarksville's tremendous with growth right now, and I am the council person in the ward that actually has the largest saturation because that's where the new growth has been. I wish that I had such a calm story. I actually started 2 years out just to get name recognition, and because I knew, that I was going to be somewhat of an underdog, and also because Frontier Project will tell you got to have your pedal to the metal the whole time. So I ran for approximately a year and a half, thinking that there was going to be 2 people in my race. And once we did our qualifications, they had flooded the ballot. So I won in a 6-way race. I want to say it was with, I can't remember the percentage now, but it actually ended up being between me and one other gentleman. And I won by 113 votes. But election night was a nightmare. My precinct was the last one to close. And then I was the last race that they called. And if anyone paid attention, it was very much an emotional roller coaster. After they tallied up early votes, I was in the lead by 40. And then after they tallied one precinct, I was down by like 15 votes. And at that point, I just conceded that I had lost in my own mind. And at about midnight, they called from one of the local media outlets and they said, "Hey, we're calling it for you." And I was like, not yet. So it was really wild. But I will say something, Jim. I think that you should be jealous because swinging signs at the commission is probably the most fun I had the entire campaign.
Well, I am jealous, by the way. I actually would prefer an opponent because I like competition in politics as well as business. So I actually would welcome an opponent, but
maybe not 5.
Maybe not. Oh, 5 might even be better. You might have been lucky there to get 5. Might have been made it a little easier for you to get through to voters and to be the prevailing winner there. So
he is
win re-election that way.
He's absolutely right. You win at the door.
Yeah.
So are either of your races partisan, or are they both nonpartisan? City councils are often
nonpartisan.
Same, nonpartisan.
So did you have to deal with any negative libertarian baggage when you were there? I mean, in Nebraska, even a nonpartisan race, people oftentimes know what you are. So did you have to deal with any of that?
Well, I haven't really had to deal with it much, even though there is a background issue here. One of the former residents of my city is the infamous Augustus Evictus, who you've probably all heard about him, I presume. Most voters don't know too much about him. They just vaguely remember some goat blood drinking guy from a few years ago or something. Very weird character, and he tried to take over the Libertarian Party here and failed dramatically, but he still, got attention. So I have kept that in mind, but I haven't really had much of a negative story about being a libertarian. Everybody knows I am, pretty much, especially all the people in the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce types and all that. They all know, but it seems that it's a positive. In my experience, I don't get a lot of criticism for that, and so it's really been a good feeling to be a libertarian here, and not a lot of negativity about it.
Trisha?
So we had kind of an image issue, and it was less about our people and more about, once you're identified as someone who's going to come in and challenge the cult, so to speak, they like to start calling you the crazies and the boot heads and all that stuff. But we took a lot of time as a county party creating credibility in some of the things that we were doing. So that was helpful. I did spend a larger portion of the beginning of my race, saying, oh, I'm an independent, because in Tennessee, the Libertarian Party is not a real party, right? But the farther that I got into it, the more I realized, like, if I'm not doing this for the party, if I'm not doing this to say, hey, you have a third option, then, I was kind of failing at the whole purpose. So I'd say in the last 6 months or so, I started really saying, here I am, I'm a libertarian. And then of course I got real outward once I won, and there is no denying it now, and they like to call me out for it. So
you see Carrie's question there, asked if you have opportunities to tell people you're libertarians, because it is important, obviously, that when we've got great examples of people who are, doing it, and great examples of people who are actively engaged in local governance, that, it's good for people to know that, libertarians can be competent and sane and, actually get things done. So have you had some, you were just talking about that, Trisha, but Jim, you have opportunities to tell people you're a libertarian?
Oh, yes. Like I said, I'm fairly well known as, the libertarian in the county. There's more than one, though. We had a very high profile election, partisan election in November with Andre Klass running for the county commission. That's my county. He ended up being a very high profile candidate, was the talk of the county, frankly. His earned votes on election day came nowhere near reflecting the impact that he had. And he did a good job representing us. That allowed me to realize how many people were very conscious that I was a libertarian, and through, that election cycle. So it wasn't my campaigning, but, and very frequently voters. I do a lot of door, as Trisha does, and knocking on doors, and usually introducing myself as the commissioner, of course, and there to listen to what they have to say. But still, a lot of people ask me what party I'm in, and of course I tell them right away. I don't get much negativity from that. Every now and then they act like they don't know what I'm talking about, but most people do. So it seems to be a pretty positive thing in my experience. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just not telling me. But I'm really widely known as a libertarian, even though I don't have that title on the ballot.
Andy?
So, we talked a little bit about elections. I think one of the things you both seem to agree on the importance of is knocking doors and getting out there and really talking to voters. Since you were elected, how have you been received on the council? I mean, I think you're both the only libertarian on the commission in Alamonte Springs and the council there in Clarksville. How did your fellow legislators react to having this third party libertarian showing up and being in their business?
Go for it, Trisha. You're first.
Okay, I have on my council, and I'm so lucky, a former lifetime member, actually, and then another gentleman who came into the Libertarian Party as a Tea Party guy. He's not so much anymore, but the one that was a lifetime member, our principles, even if you choose to leave the party, the principles are still there. So I can always look there across and know that, I've got one vote. I won't be the lone guy saying no, so that is really nice. But I have done, I think, pretty well with my colleagues finding common ground. So the girl who sits next to me, for instance, is a friend of mine. I consider her a friend. I care about her. She's progressive, and she is unabashedly progressive. So I will say something then, you know, she'll turn her mic on and she'll dispute what I just said. And then, you know, at the end of it, we walk away, we're still friends. So I think that that's really, a mutual respect is extremely important. So in my council, I've kind of been identified as a swing voter. And I think that's just because they don't know just yet what I'll do. But I think that, I think it'll come pretty clear. If it comes to money, I'm probably going to say no. But we'll see as it goes a little farther in.
Jim?
Well, I am very fortunate here. There's a really great city staff in Alamonte Springs and good city manager that manage things well, and they really work hard to stay away from controversy too. So we don't really have too many things to get into about between each other. And but my impression from and by the way, in Florida, we have extremely strict laws. We call them sunshine laws that prohibit us from discussing pretty much anything with each other other than when the mic is on in the commission meeting. So there may be ideas they have that I'm not hearing about me or the Libertarian Party, but the informal things that, and just the body language and that sort of thing that I get is that they think rather positively, but we haven't gotten into debates. And I don't fortunately have the situation where, you know, if I say something, you know, progressive on the panel is going to try to dispute whatever. But our culture here is really different than most cities, including the cities around here. So we have minimal discussion generally, and we generally have pretty mundane things coming before us. And so there has been actually not a great opportunity to test those alliances. But I do think I have a couple of people on the commission who are more or less in agreement and like, you know, what they think of as the libertarian approach. And I hope they've got that right. And I don't, like I said, I don't see much controversy, fortunately, on my commission. It makes it easy. And by the way, I should add that we don't have any debt in my city, which is very rare. And we haven't raised taxes in 10 years. In fact, we downsized the city 10 years ago during the Great Recession, and we never grew it back. We still have the reduced personnel load. And one final point that keeps us out of controversy here is we're a rare police department, even for our area, that's not unionized. So we're really lucky here. I mean, I'm lucky as a libertarian. It's almost a shame. It just makes it almost too easy. But that doesn't mean there are not places and ways that, you know, that there could be some action. I look for opportunities that make sense. I just don't want to look like I'm picking a fight randomly just to be, you know, fighting. And so, and like I said, there's not much controversy. So it seems to be those opportunities are fairly rare.
So Alexandra has a great question here for you. When did you know that you wanted to run for local elected office? Trisha?
Yep.
Right when we first got back here, because we went to Pittsburgh so my husband could go to school. Right when we first got back, I want to say it was 4 years ago. So I knew that I wanted to get involved civically. That's the way I thought about it. I'm going to run for office. I have, you know, skills in the political realm that I wanted to be able to use. I'm a veteran, so serving is important to me. And you know, us libertarians talk about running a lot. So that kind of just went hand in hand. I was newer to the Libertarian Party and they were talking about running, and I knew that that was something that I wanted to do. The biggest thing is that I looked up on the city council, and you know, you see a lot of the same faces, a lot of the same professions, and I don't want to say that it's not like they're trying to fill their pockets thing, but the people that sit on city council typically have a reason. You know, there was something in their lives that seemed like it would be a good idea. And for me, my motivation was just, I want to see Susie Homemaker sitting up there. and that was kind of what drew me to it, the want to serve, and then the want to see more equal representation on city council.
Well, I have been in the Libertarian Party a long time, and as a leader from time to time over the years, I have spent a lot of effort trying to convince people and recruit people to run for office. So obviously, I've sort of always been looking for, where's my chance? When does it look like there's something that's going to work for me, both because whatever I'm doing in my personal life, or of course, the nature of the competition and the constituency, the kind of opportunities that exist there. And so kind of always had a bit of a radar out for that. And so about 5-6 years ago, I started looking especially at my city commission. And so it was an easy choice, sort of always in the background, looking for a chance, and went for a long time without a really good opportunity. So it came up, and it turned out to be easier than I expected.
Great.
Very nice. So, Trisha, we want to get a little bit into some of the issues y'all have been working on. One of the things that really caught my eye, and I shared this, and a lot of libertarians liked it. So people might be familiar. There's short-term rentals, Airbnb and that sort of thing, that have been subject to a lot of local regulations and limits. And you introduced a bill, which I think is my favorite I've ever seen, because it was 12 pages of nothing but red line deletions. You proposed to completely eliminate Clarksville's limits and regulations on Airbnb. So how has that gone? How's that been received? And why was that the issue you decided to go after?
So that was relatively new. They just passed that, I want to say in September, somewhere around there. So it caused a stir, and a lot of people and a lot of the community leadership was like, hey, this is a crock. So then I started reading through it, and I was like, okay, most of this is already covered. Like, you're talking about, no, they're being noisy over there. Well, there's noise ordinances that already cover that. Oh, well, there's too many cars parked in the street. Well, there's a police station you can call about that. So I knew that I wanted to repeal that. And I just said, hey, how do I do this? How do I write up this repeal? And it ended up just being the whole chapter struck through. So it kind of seemed like a showboat thing. It really wasn't. It was just this ordinance that had passed that also happened to be an entire chapter of the code. So I just put it up as a repeal, and it actually did pass first reading. It still has to make it through one more. But I like to point out that the two amendments that came up, because it's an appeal, if you offer an amendment, you're killing the whole repeal. You're saying, no, we're going to keep the whole thing. Let's just change these few things. So last Thursday when we voted on it, it actually essentially got voted 3 times on. And, the 2 amendments failed, and then my repeal passed. So, of course, I'm still nervous because we do still have it on consent agenda. It needs to pass one more. But even if it gets knocked down and it goes back into committee and they want to try to, adjust it or something, I mean, there are some things I'd be willing to work with. But calling it a fee when you're charging people is still a tax. And it was really overreach, and it was someone's project that they wanted to say, I put a lot of time and effort into this, and I acknowledge that. I understand. But, putting a year's worth of effort and talking to the police chief and the fire chief, that still doesn't make it a good piece of legislation. So, I wasn't trying to hurt feelings, but I had to walk through that.
Very nice. So here in a minute, we kind of touched on that. Apollo's question, which is what are your favorite legislative accomplishments so far? But before we get to that, I actually want to circle back to something you said, Jim, that really caught my ear. You don't have a unionized police force. How does that work? And how does that? Do you find that accountability? Do you have fewer disciplinary incidents and problems, and how does that work out for y'all, and budgetary wise?
Right. Well, exactly the benefit. We don't have too many disciplinary problems because we don't have as much difficulty getting rid of a bad policeman. Somebody is not meeting our standards, and we have high standards. And so we're actually looked upon in the cities in the area as an exemplary police force that people want to be part of. So we actually get the better policemen will come and try to get onto our force, the better quality people, and the ones that don't make the cut end up going, we won't take them, they go somewhere else and get the job. So it's not that we haven't had problems. We've had a few problems, but we got rid of those people when we had those problems. But we've had very few complaints, but we're a pretty innovative city. So one of the things on the police issue, for example, is I think we're the first city in Florida to have body cams. And I mean, we've had them for 25 years or so. We've had every police car has a cam in it so you can monitor what the police are doing. The only thing that might be improvement on that, we could go to 24/7 body cams on the police. Right now, they do have to trigger it, but there's all kind of automatic ways. If a gunshot or something that sounds like a gunshot happens in their area, it automatically turns on. If they unholster their weapon, it automatically, or their taser, it automatically turns on. There's a lot of automatic turning on situations, but they can manually, they're supposed to turn it on with they're required by our rules to turn it on with any interaction at all with the public. One of the main things we've discovered is it dramatically decreases the complaints against the police, because when people are told, oh, you had this happen there at that time. Okay, well, we'll review the footage. We've got a video. We'll have a video of that. We'll bring it up. And then suddenly they're going, oh, well, actually, I just thought I'd say something. I don't think it's a really serious complaint. And, they start backpedaling. That doesn't happen every single time, but it's the most common reaction. So we benefit from not having the union there constantly trying to defend people who shouldn't be defended. So we're lucky and have a good police force and very professional bunch of folks there.
So I'm curious, Jim, because I was on a public school board for 12 years. How do you do your pay raises and negotiations for contracts and things like that with your force? How big is the police force?
I believe it's about 120 police. And of course, we also have, like everywhere else, I guess, we have county sheriffs that police our city as well as state police. So we're not the only, police in the area, but that's a lot of police, and they're a big group. Pay raises are I guess, city commission business, and we will look at that pretty much every year. It goes into our budget. We obviously have a balanced budget. We don't go into debt here. So we sort that out in our budget meetings, and but they usually get a raise every year of a couple of percentage points.
So do you have a standard starting rate, for instance, and a standard rate for all sergeants? Or, I mean, how do you,
Wow.
It's getting into the weeds, I know. But
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know the
really
answer to that. I'll have to look into that if there's any, standards there. I'm pretty sure there are. I don't think they, do a soft negotiation with every single,
Right.
person who comes in. But we also are fortunate in that we usually hire from within. So our current police chief has been on our police force for since his early days as a policeman, and he just decided to retire about a month ago. So we are taking someone else who's been on the force for a very long time, I think at least 10 or 12 years. He's been the assistant police chief, and he's now going to move up, and we have a full 1-year transition there. So there's a lot of continuity and a hiring from within. So it's not always, especially if you're getting into above just the standard patrolman, you're probably already in their system, and of course you'll get a raise when you get a more responsibility.
So we didn't ask this, I don't think. Jim, how many people are on your commission? How many members?
We have 5, including the mayor and including myself. We have,
Okay.
they're all equal, but the mayor is a ceremonial position, but it is elected separately and at large. You can live anywhere in the city limits if you're the mayor. If you're one of the other 4 commissioners, you have to live, you still run at large, but you have to live in your district. So I guess the idea of that is to keep some cabal of people on one street from running the city or something.
I
Because
suppose.
we all run at large, but
Right.
you have to live in a certain area.
Trisha, how many are on your council?
Can I just say first, I'm going to go move to Altamont and run against Jim Turney.
All right. We need some
So
Libertarian
jealous.
competition.
I have 12 that are selected in their each respective wards. And then our mayor actually is also considered a councilman. We have our charter is set up where we have what's called a powered mayor. So he can vote, he can veto. It's all very fun.
Okay. So can we assume, Trisha, that your favorite accomplishment or whatever so far, because you haven't been in office very long, has been the Airbnb repeal?
I was pretty proud of that. I was super proud of it once Andy posted it and I saw the feedback on it. Because like I said, I just put in for a repeal, but I did get a little bit of a giggle out of the 12-page strike through. That will definitely be my most proud accomplishment if it makes it through the second round.
And Jim, what big thing has happened since you've been on the board, on the commission?
Well, it started before I got on, but we razzed a park, a high-profile park that has a lot of facilities, indoor, outdoor pools, and conference center, and all this. We razzed it and built another one, brand new, and just opened about a year ago. But that was done by saving money for 10 years so we didn't borrow a cent. We saved all the 17 million we needed to do it, then razzed it and rebuilt it. So that's the way my city rolls here. So the most exciting thing maybe that's on pause right now, unfortunately, because of the uncertainty about the economy due to COVID and, all the lockdowns and all that. And investors, stand back and say, let's wait and see. But we decided to sell City Hall and our police station and become tenants in a private development. But it's all on hold at the moment because obviously that's a big project. And we were in the negotiations with the developer, which we had already chosen to do this. And obviously it's just it's hit a bump in the road due to the lockdowns and COVID and everything. So I don't know where it's going to go. Hopefully it will pick up again and we'll be able to make that happen. But I like the ring of that, selling City Hall, and so we would then not have the city property that we own and have to maintain, and that doesn't bring in any revenues, from the property tax or whatever. But anyway, so if it gets privately owned and operated, the risk is on the developers for all of that. And so it's great for the taxpayers anyway. So.
It's an awesome thought. I mean, if you get it done, let us know so that we can so that we can say that, Commissioner Turney voted to, sell City Hall.
I'll let you know, but it's definitely premature to be talking about it, actually. But that was the most exciting thing I could think of.
That's pretty exciting.
Very boring, calm city here.
Yeah. So the UNLV Young Libertarians asked, what advice would you give to college students or other youth about getting involved in the process?
Trish?
First of all, I'm a college student, so get your booty in there and make a chapter for Libertarians. And I'm talking to myself when I say that too, because I know that we have a chapter here at Austin P that used to be active and is no longer active. So we definitely need to get those chapters back going, because those are our door knockers. you know, and those are the people that we need to help us win elections. So that is something that is actually important to me. And I have made some strides to do that among the 50,000 other things I do. Also, my 14-year-old is super active in the party. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you make her. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't make her. She asked me to join for 2 or 3 years. And I said, have you read the platform? And she's like, I'm not reading all that. And I said, well, then you're not joining the party. So, you know, eventually she read through the platform and stuff, and she came to me and said, here's why I want to be a libertarian. And frankly, my 14-year-old is more libertarian than me. She is the vice chair of Tennessee's Young Libertarians. And she also serves in the county as an at-large. She actually took over my position. So the biggest thing that I can tell you is get out there and do it. The Libertarian Party is really good for this. The other parties tend to not take kids so seriously, and we do. We have a lot of youth right now in Tennessee that are, we have one that's running a campaign for one of our candidates. So you have the opportunity to do it in the Libertarian Party. And hey, if you can email me or call me and I'll help you get you plugged in wherever you need to go. But just, you know, there's a Bible scripture that says, don't let them look down on you because you're young. And that is probably what I would say. Grab it by the horns and do it.
All right. Well, that's good, man. And I endorse that. But I do have a few things to add on that I think that every Libertarian Party member should try to do. There are 2 things that I would advocate. One is join a local civic group so that you can build relationships in the community. You get a much better sense of the culture in your community, and you start getting to know those civic groups are the influencers in your community usually. That doesn't mean they think they are. They think they're just citizens who want to, you know, do something good for the community. But that's the spirit that you're looking for and trying to capture, and go in there with a learning and listening attitude, by the way. The other thing that you need to do with that learning and listening attitude is go to your city elected officials. And I'm sure Trish has this problem, like I do, of finding people who are willing to accept appointments to citizens boards. Those boards are a great stepping stone for eventually elected office. But even if you choose not to run for elective office ever, by having served on those boards, you'll understand a lot more about the political process. Because guess what? You are a public official. You're just not an elected one. You're an appointed one. And some of those appointments are rather powerful with what they do with how they decide to spend tax money, for example, or if tremendous impact on regulation or on penalties and code violations and that sort of thing. The point is that you'll build relationships. You'll learn a lot about the political culture in your community that you might have missed out on otherwise if you're just hanging out on Facebook. But you will definitely see how it is to serve in public office, because it's really the same, not much different, except you don't go through the election part. And you'll look good. It'll look good on your resume if you ever decide to run, to have served. If you look at the bios of almost any elected official anywhere, you'll see that they'll mention the boards they were appointed and served on the way to being elected. And finally, again, I want to punch in and say, it's really valuable to do, even if you're not going to run for office, because you'll be a much greater asset to the person in your community who does decide to run for office. If you've got those relationships and you understand what's going on, you'll be a much greater asset to helping people get elected. So please, if you're a member of the Libertarian Party, please go visit around to the civic groups in your area, find one that you get along with well enough, when they meet, what they do, and join it. And get with your elected officials at your municipal level, at your county level, even your state level, and try to get appointments. Get appointed as a public official.
Absolutely. Do we have some more questions, Andy, or shall I start popping some out of the comments?
Sure. I had one more thing I wanted to touch on, then we can go to the topics or the comments. You mentioned, Jim, the local boards, and I'm not sure how this works in your 2 cities, but and in a lot of places, zoning is a board like that. Sometimes it's done through the council or commission, sometimes it's an appointed board. But I just wanted to ask, how has that been an issue in your city that's come up? It's one thing where I know a lot of libertarians elsewhere have been able to accomplish a lot of good by getting people zoning permissions that they were trying to get. So how's that work in Alamonte Springs and there in Clarksville? Let's start with you, Trish.
We always start with me.
All
right. Zoning. That's a fun one. Can I start off? First of all, I am not much of a radical. I think everyone knows that. But the fact of the matter is zoning is crap, and we really just want to get rid of all of it, right? Here in Clarksville, we do have the RPC, the Regional Planning Commission. It is a board. There are, I want to say, two city council people, 2 county commissioners, something like that, and then a bunch of people that are appointed, like Jim was saying. The thing about the people that get appointed to these boards here in Clarksville, Tennessee, is that you will notice if you look over them, it's all the same people. So what we're really doing is consolidating power to a certain group of people that make every decision all over the city. And, actually the county. And then it comes to the city council and we vote on it, but it only has to pass 1 reading if it goes through that committee. So it's kind of like, and there's a little bit more to that than just that, but we definitely, I get to approve the zoning, but it does go through the commission first. I think that answers you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Similar story in Alamonte Springs. We do, have, of course, a citizens. Technically, they're classified as citizens advisory boards because even though we pretty much just rubber stamp whatever they do, technically we have the authority. They just bring it to us, and then we can change it if we want or not approve it or whatever. It doesn't happen very often, but it is also true. Unlike Clarksville, we are very filled in city. We don't have. It's more of an urban area here. There's not much new development or growth, you could say, in my city. So there's not a lot of zoning switching and changing and moving around. So you could say a mature city in that regard. But whenever a citizen or a business wants to rezone their property, if they come to us, and that's the only thing I've seen so far in my tenure is people coming to us asking to be rezoned. Yeah, I do that. Sure, if you want to be rezoned, no problem. You can have that. You ask for it, you get it, if that's the concern. I mean, they're not getting any benefit in the sense of subsidies or anything out of the zoning. It's just basically to allow them to change the nature of their business or whatever they're going to do on their property. And yes, I would prefer we not have that system work like that, but that's not going to be something that that's one of those long game kind of projects, I think, and look for opportunities to deal with that. But I want to go back to something that Trisha said that's very important, and it really kind of follows on what I said. The reason there are so many people who serve on so many boards is because there are not a lot of people who are going to their elected officials and saying, hey, I don't mind serving my community. I kind of like it, and find a place for me. Here's the things where I think I would be most valuable, but if you need me on something, let me know. But because there are not a lot of people doing that, and it can be really tough to find people who are willing to serve. I've even had trouble finding people willing to serve on a board that never meets. I mean, hasn't met in 15 years. It's like, okay, so you put your name in the hat and then you do nothing. And it's pat you on the back, and we feed you once a year, and an appreciation dinner we have for our board members. That's the only thing you have to do. Show up to dinner once a year. But people often don't want to do anything, are reluctant, let's say. So the same people get appointed over and over again. And I'm sure that's not the only reason that sometimes there's something else going on and they do want to, they're control freaks or something. And, but that's why I advocate libertarians try to get board appointments, because at least they can't say you weren't interested in trying to help. And that's why I also advocate that you accept a board appointment, even for something that you might not find very exciting, but it lets them see that, you're not there to, misbehave when given the responsibility. And then you'll start getting appointed to other boards that do carry a little more weight. And you'll eventually find yourself running for elected office. But hey, this is a political party, so you signed up.
When you get beyond city and local boards, even many states have boards and commissions that are sometimes really tough for governors to fill. They're typically governor appointments. In Nebraska, for instance, we have a rule that no more than half of a board or commission, and they rotate their terms of office, but no more than half can be a member of the same party as the governor. Well, that opens the door wide for libertarians right now, because we don't have any governors who are libertarians. But most Republican governors would prefer not to nominate or name somebody, who's a Democrat to a board, and most Democrats would prefer not to name somebody who's a Republican. So we ought to be applying for some of those boards and commission positions, because we're not a member of the party that the governor is. So I think that's
excellent point. And I've done a little bit of work in looking into that in Florida, but not enough. That is an untapped gold mine. I mean, that's really amazing what can be done in that department, in my opinion. We have had a few people appointed in Florida, but not for that reason exactly. So we have that law though here. So you're absolutely right to say this is an area where we're really missing an opportunity to find members and give them an incredible opportunity to learn and serve and boost their chances, build our bench of potential elected officials down the road. We're in this as a long game, so we have to look at those kind of opportunities. Terribleness.
And I will note that we're running a banner across the bottom that tells you what's coming. You can go to the LPCaucus.org/events, and that will tell you what's happening. We're going to be doing a series of these, about one every month, of the town halls, plus some other events. I don't know. Andy and I haven't figured out who we're going to talk to yet next month, but sometime in the next month or two, we're going to get some libertarians who sit on some of those boards and commissions, and see what kind of experience they're having. So, Andy?
And Sherry mentions in the comments what I was just thinking of, which is that what you described is exactly how Mark Rutherford ended up on the Public Defender Commission, which he's now the chair of, statewide Public Defender Commission in Indiana. It was about, Republican governor. There he was maxed out on the number of Republicans he could appoint, didn't want to pick a Democrat, and hey, here's a Libertarian I can appoint. And I think there's been something similar that's happened in Alaska with the Elections Commission there. I don't recall all the details offhand. So Tim asks, Tim Hagan, our esteemed National Party treasurer, ask a question, which is, what are you looking at for the future? Are you planning to stay at the city level in your current position? Have you thought about running for some higher office, or the mayor or state legislator or county, or what are you thinking about the long term? Go ahead, Trish.
You first. Seeing as I just stopped campaigning 2 months ago, I'm still in that position where I'm like, I'm never running again for anything ever. So enjoy me for the next 4 years. But, the fact of the matter is, if people wanted me to move up, I would be willing to do that, maybe after I get a little distance from the campaign trail. But I think that we all know, well, those of us that are involved in politics know that pretty much the most effective position that there is state legislator. And after realizing that, it's kind of like a goal in the back of my head. I would like to do that one day. But again, I just don't have the space between me and the campaign trail yet. So I think if the situation worked out futuristically where that was an opportunity that I could take and that the people would want me there, I would be willing to move up. I'm definitely not thinking about mayor yet, Andy.
It was sort of a similar situation. I'm trying to make the most value I can in for our long game in setting an image of what it looks like when a Libertarian is elected. So since we have had a serious problem with getting Libertarians reelected, and I might add it's often because they decide they need to too quickly jump to running into higher office from a lower level office. And so I would much rather be able to say, yes, I'm reelected again and again than, oh, I ran after, a short while, I ran for some higher office and I lost. And so I need to be fairly confident that it's going to be a win for the Libertarian Party, as well as myself and the citizenry. But I want to see the Libertarian Party get a win out of it if I'm going to run for higher office, especially if it's not a really decent chance of winning it. Of course, assuming hard campaigning, that goes without saying. A good campaign plan and good execution they're not going to be freebies like the situation I've got now. I understand that. So I'm not looking for another easy shot like I've had to get into this office. So that's the formula that I'm looking at. So the answer on that formula right now is no, there's nothing in sight that looks like it's interesting to me.
So Carrie's asked a question. This kind of takes us back to the campaigning and volunteers. But she says, it sounds like door knocking is important. We all know that, right? Are there any other ways that volunteers can help you campaign?
I'll answer that. I found that the most effective use of most volunteers is still at the door, but not knocking on the door, because it's very expensive to do a mailing to houses, and it can be very time consuming to knock on the door and engage with people. And let's face it, there's a lot of people who that's just not very interesting to them for whatever reason, their personality, or they're just not ready for, or we don't want, maybe they want to, but we see how they behave and whatever the dress and so forth, and we just don't think they're appropriate for a neighborhood anyway, for a particular neighborhood. So the bottom line is that I found is a great way to volunteer is the way I tell the volunteers is every time that you take this card and stick it in somebody's door, you just saved me 40 cents. You just saved me 40 cents. That's what, so think how many of those you can do in 1 hour. That's a great contribution. And if you keep doing that, and also, by the way, I'll add this extra tip. I combination use a postcard and a door hanger. It works as both. And so that means in the address portion, where if it was going to be mailed like to a neighborhood, a gated community, you have to physically mail them. Of course, you don't go knocking on those doors. But in the area where I might mail it in some circumstances, I ask them to write a little note, because they know whose door they're knocking on. They know the name of the voters there. So I say, just, hey, Joe, sorry we missed you, or give the candidate a call or something like that. It depends on whether I'm there doing it or they're there. And so anyway, a short little quick note to personalize it, stick it in their door. I think that's very effective, and it's almost any volunteer. It's easy to get volunteers to do that compared to knocking on the door and saying, oh, let me talk to you.
Right.
Trish, you ready?
Yeah.
You ready? All right. Text banking, phone banking, showing up when we're on the side of the road, shaking signs. That was something that I did. I got a lot of good feedback on that. But you can't be out there with just you and your sign. You got to have 2 or 3 people. And we're really just sitting out there listening to music, acting like idiots. So it's fun anyway, right? So we got that. I sent out kind of to tag on to what Jim said, my first round of mailers were homemade. So we stuck every address label on there. We stuck every stamp on there, and I signed them all. I got hugely good feedback on that, but I need people to help me do that, right? And then Libertarians love this part, and this is only half of the campaign, but anytime you see that candidate in your city post something on Facebook, share it everywhere. Wildfire, blow it up. So those are a couple of the things that my volunteers help me to do. And then at early voting, I mean, that's 2 weeks. And, you know, depending on how many precincts there are, we need 4 or 5 people there every single day for 2 weeks between, you know, the hours of 8 and 4. So there are plenty of volunteer opportunities for sure.
Good points, Trisha. I agree with all of those.
Wonderful. Well, let me see if there's any new comments, and if not,
Well, while you're looking for that, I'll just mention, we have these town halls monthly with Libertarian office holders, but we also have training. And coming up here later this month, we have Apollo Pizzell of the Frontier Project, which, like we mentioned, Trisha is part of. It's been as our caucus, it's been our big priority. We lobbied the LNC to fund it. It's a big part of why Joe Bishop Pinchman ran for chair. We love the Frontier Project, and so we're going to have the campaign guru himself, Apollo Pizzell, here later this month, discussing how to pick an office to run for, which is something, Libertarians, one of the shifts we've seen in the party, and it's great. And Trisha and Jim are both evidence of that, is, maybe Congress isn't the best thing to run for out of the gate. I came into the party a few years back, and I got recruited to run for first a statewide office and then Congress, and it was fun and I enjoyed it, and that has its place, but I didn't come anywhere close to winning. And so, but this is one of the things we're really looking forward to, is talking about how to find and pick an office to run for. And so we're looking forward to having Apollo join us here later this month for that.
Yeah, and you will notice running across the bottom of your screen, we suggest that people find their state affiliates and get connected with their state affiliates as well, because they a lot of times will have a good idea of what offices are available, what are going to be up for election this year. And so get in touch with your LP state affiliates. Every state has one, or just about every state does anyhow. And it's a great way to make connections with other Libertarians as well. Well, I think that we've about come to the end of our time. I want to thank Jim and Trisha for joining us. And of course, Andy and I will be back again in about a month. We haven't picked the exact date yet, but it'll probably be in about a month with at least 2 other guests. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today, and those who are going to be watching us on both Facebook and on our YouTube channel later. So have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Trisha, thanks for helping your city, and you're helping the Libertarian Party too. Great
I'm so
work.
jealous of you, Jim. You're my hero.
Come on down.